This report has its own website. It's a complete site that we're going to poke around in for a few minutes, but it's also referenced on your investor relations page. And it's right here, right next to the proxy statement, annual report, et cetera. So Sandy, has that been the case for a number of years? I know you've done this kind of report for a number of years, but I think it's significant that this is also on the investor relations page.
Yeah, actually it has been on the IR website for a number of years. And what has evolved over time is that a lot of the content on the corporate website relies on the sustainability website. So our corporate accountability report is the source for updates on public policy or environmental or anything like that. There's a lot of linking to the corporate accountability report. So we get a lot of mileage out of that. But it is really important for investors to see that. And it is a tool that we use, and we'll talk more about that specifically with investor engagement. So it's very important that it's here, and it has been for a long time.
Cool. So I'll just remind people that if you have things in the background going on, if you can mute yourself, then we won't hear your private conversations. So let's jump over to your the corporate accountability site. As Sandy said, they've got a separate website. It reads like an introduction to the basics of integrated reporting with a lot of the headings here. I'll start here on the About section with about this report, which goes down a little bit down. Just to highlight that AEP has been doing this for a lot of years, and they have each of the years here. And then you've been doing this as a website for a long time, Sandy, but then was this the first year that you had this feature about building a PDF? Or?
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit, Mary, but yes, this is the first time that we've actually put this feature on the website where you can pick and choose the content that you want to build your own report, basically, for each of the major sections. It's something that actually investors asked us a lot about because we went away from paper copy several years ago to being fully web-based, but we still have to produce a brochure because investor relations still needs a leave behind piece, a collateral piece, but it's not the whole report. And we were getting questions from largely investors, but from other stakeholders as well. How can I get the whole report? And for a long time, we were just kind of putting it into a Word document and creating a PDF, which is not very pretty at all. And last year, we were able to work with our creative team to get this feature built into the website. And it's actually been pretty popular, so that when people ask for a copy of the report, they can just go here and get the whole thing or just the sections that they're most interested in.
Cool. Great. So let's kind of move to and look at, kind of get down into the content a little more. One of the basic ideas of integrated reporting is that it's connecting, the short-term and the long-term thinking and connecting with the strategy of the organization. So you've got this section here that I think is a real basic introduction. I also like that it's, it has financials in there, and there are a couple places where we have financials graded in here with their capital expenditures. So and I want to just jump back to the chairman's message, because I think this pulls a lot of the pieces together, and again talks about the financials.
The one thing that I would add, Mary, about both the strategy for the future is that over time, this has become really future focused. at the direction of both the board of directors and the CEO. So you'll see a lot in this report about where we're going. And obviously, the financials, and we really do try to connect all the dots between financial and non-financial performance. But that's probably the biggest shift that we've seen in the last 3 years, is that this is very future focused. It still covers past performance because that's very important. That tells you, the kind of company that you are. It shows, where you are, where you've been, the improvements you've made or not. But it also lays out a pretty clear path as best we can on where we're going in the future. And that, I think, is different from a lot of sustainability reports.
Yeah, I think that's a great point about, and what makes something an integrated report. I'm just flipping through some of these tables. At the last tab in your site is it's called the performance summary, and you have some of your key indicators in these 3 categories. And as you said, Cindy, I mean, a number of them talk about the future, which is exciting.
Yeah, what I love about this particular aspect of our reporting is that you can click on one of these things and it takes you directly to the content within the site. So, or it should anyways. Maybe if you click on the, well,
yeah,
it's supposed to
the content. Practice that part.
It's supposed to.
Yeah.
But it really is designed as, and this is actually something that our board of directors asked us for. They wanted to have a snapshot of performance and make it really easy to see all this data in one place. And so we struggled with it. We've had a couple iterations of it, but this is probably the best by far that we've done with respect to putting that performance summary together. And, we always look at what other people are doing because I'm not afraid to borrow, quote unquote, borrow best practices. And I've done that from a lot of companies out there. To see what's out there, and we're not afraid to try something new to make it better.
Yep.
The idea is to put information in people's hands as easy as possible, as clearly as possible, and that's what we strive to do. And
Yep.
The summary, I mean, people don't read these reports cover to cover. We don't expect that to happen. So putting a summary together like this gives a snapshot of that, that environment or, that economic and that social aspect of sustainability, but it does, weave in the financials as well.
Yeah, that's great. So let's see. I thought the one other thing we could do is just kind of give a quick kind of inventory of the capitals, if you will. I think we saw that there were a number of financial indicators in the strategic overview and some of the abouts. It's clear if you look at energy and technology, this is about natural capital, but I'd also volunteer probably that I think technology and innovation talks about intellectual capital, and that being one of my favorite topics. I thought this was very interesting as you talked about technology and what you're doing going forward in terms of innovation. And the kinds of things behind the scenes. It's not just about the equipment, it's about the knowledge base there. Things like data analytics, there are a lot of things in that part. So we've got some of the natural capital, some of the manufactured capital, the hard assets, social responsibility. You've got quite a bit of employee data, so human capital here.
Yeah, there is. Yep.
Are you using kind of a lot of the same data year after year in these reports? I mean, because you've been doing this now for a number of years, so have you settled into kind of the same?
Well, and our subject matter experts inside the company ask us that all the time. So there is a set of data points that we report on and update every single year. safety and health is a great example of that.
Okay.
You know, what's our performance look like? What do the numbers look like? Reliability of the power grid. Those are other metrics that we report on, and those are data points that show up every single year. But there are always new data points that kind of present themselves as we're putting the story together, if you will. And I'm trying to think of something, continuous improvement, managing performance. You know, what does that look like? You know, those are some things that will change every year. You know, diversity and inclusion. If you looked at our report in 2016, that was like a sub of a sub, you know, within the report. And now it's really called out within that, you know, employee section, that social responsibility section, because it is a huge, huge issue for AEP. If you just scroll down, you'll see, and that whole section is all about diversity and inclusion. Yep. You know, our CEO was one of the very first CEOs to commit to the Paradigm for Parity. Also signed the CEO pledge for inclusiveness. That was the PwC pledge. We have a number of employee resource groups. It's a very important issue from a social perspective. But you know, when we think about the workforce of the future, you know, we need this. This is how we get there. And so now we talk about it in a much deeper way than we ever have before. So it's interesting to see how some of these capitals and these focus areas have evolved over time as well, where at one point they might have just been a couple of paragraphs, and now there's entire sections of content devoted to them because they've become values to the company, or they are core to the mission, or they are part of the path to the future. So it's really important to see how these, and really interesting to see how these have evolved over the years.
Cool. So let's think, you know, community, that's part with your customers, an important part of relationship capital. And then of course, you know, we have natural capital with, you know, a number of different key areas here. You know, one of the things that I hear people talking about, Sandy, when they're talking about an integrated report versus, you know, more complete, if you will, sustainability reporting, is choosing what goes in here. Is that something that you struggle with? Are you doing a lot of, you know, more detailed reporting outside of this, or does this become your main source of information for the market?
This is our main source of information. This year, this is actually pretty incredible, where our senior management said they see this report as important as the 10K, because it tells the story. The data's a lot of the data is the same. It's not different necessarily. There's just more of it, and there's more context around it, where 10Ks and 10Qs tend to be a lot of legal language and boilerplate. This is not that. This takes that step, or even 10 steps farther. And so when you hear management say, this is a critical document, this is the, you know, as one senior executive said, this is the AEP Bible. Every employee needs to know, you know, because this tells us who we are and where we're going, as well as it shows us, you know, past performance that identifies gaps or opportunities or risks that we need to be aware of. And so it is the main document we use when we're doing any kind of outreach engagement with all different types of stakeholders, and with employees. So, you know, they're one of our more important stakeholders. But this report, especially in the last few years, has really gained, has really soared to a new level of how important and valuable it is to the organization, which, you know, no pressure.
Well, that's great. I think this has been a great introduction to the report. And as I explained to the participants at the beginning, we're recording this part. So, you know, thank you for this introduction. And what we're going to do now is continue the discussion offline and field some questions from from our audience as well. So if you're watching this video, thank you for watching and hope to see you in a future meeting.